Reverend Crystal Cox here, Goddess Church, otherwise known as Universal Church of Light. This is part 2 of 1800, the last president. Okay. I'm going to repeat a little bit of the last to get us in the mood here. Okay. The South and Far West were fairly beside themselves with joy, for there had been, from their standpoint, ugly rumors abroad for several days. It had been hinted that Bryan had surrendered to the money changers, and that the selection of his constitutional advisers would prove him recreant to the glorious cause of popular government, and that the reign of the common people would remain but a dream of the struggling masses. But these apprehensions were short-lived. The young president stood firm and fast on the platform of the parties which had raised him to his proud eminence. And what better proof of his thorough belief in himself and in his mission could he have given than the following? Secretary of State, William M. Stewart of Nevada. Secretary of Treasury, Richard P. Bland of Missouri. Secretary of War, John P. Altgeld of Illinois. Attorney General Roger Q. Mills of Texas. Postmaster General Henry George of New York. Secretary Navy John Gary Evans of South Carolina. Secretary Interior William A. Peffer of Kansas. Secretary of Agriculture Lafay Pence of Colorado. Okay. The first thing that flashes across the mind of many upon glancing over this list of names was the omission thereof of Tillman. What did it mean? Could the young president have quarreled with his best friend, his most powerful coadjutor? Coadjutor? C-O-A-D-J-U-T-O-R? Not familiar with that word. But the wiser ones only shook their head and made answer that was Tillman's hand that filled the blank for Secretary of the Navy, left there by the new ruler after the people's own heart. Evans was but a creation of this great commoner of the South, an image graven with his hands. The inaugural address was not a disappointment to those who had come to hear it. It was like the man who delivered it, bold, outspoken, unmistakable in its terms, promising much, impatient of precedent, reckless of result, a double confirmation that was to be the reign of the common people, that much should be unmade and much made over, and no matter how the rich man might cry out in anger or amazement, the nation must march on to the fulfillment of a higher and nobler mission than the impoverishment and degradation of the millions for the enrichment and the elevation of the few. Nisara Jasara. Right? We're doing it. We just got a little ways to go. A couple more weeks. Oh, by the way, today's date is, what is it? Well, it's after midnight, so it's January 14th, 2021. Okay. For future reference, this is like a time capsule. Okay. Scarcely had the young president, okay, right, millions elevation for the few. Scarcely had the young president, his large eyes filled with a strange light, and his smooth, hairless visage radiant as a cloudless sky, his wife's arm twined around his, and their hands linked in those of their children, passed with the lofty portal of the White House. Then he threw himself into a chair, and seizing a sheet of official paper, penned the following order and directed its imminent promulgation. Executive Mansion, Washington, D.C., March 4th, 1897. Executive Order Number 1. In order that there may be imminent relief in the terrible financial depression now weighing upon our beloved country, consequent upon and resulting from the unlawful combination of capitalists and moneylenders both in this republic and in England, and that the ruinous and inevitable progress toward a universal gold standard may be stayed. So, obviously, this is what we're heading into. So, the last president, and it'll be the first president of the new republic. Y'all know this stuff. Okay. And that the ruinous and inevitable progress toward universal gold standard may be stayed. The President orders and directs the immediate abandonment of the so-called gold reserve, and that on and after the promulgation of this order, the gold and silver standard of the Constitution be resumed and strictly maintained in all the business transactions of the government. Yeehaw! It was 2:00 in the afternoon when news of this now world-famous executive order was flashed into the great banking centers of the country. Yes! Its effect in Wall Street beggars description. On the floor of the stock exchange, men yelled and shrieked like painted savages, and in their mad struggle tore and trampled each other. Many dropped in fainting fits or fell exhausted from their wild and senseless efforts to say what none would listen to. Ashen pallor crept over the faces of some, while the blood threatened to burst the swollen arteries that spread in purple networks over the brows of others. We like it. When silence came at last, it was a silence broken by sobs and groans. Some wept, while others stood dumbstruck, as if it was all a bad dream, and they were awaiting the return of their poor, distraught senses to set them right again. Ambulances were hastily summoned, and fainting and exhausted forms were borne through hushed and whispering masses wedged into Wall Street, to be whirled away uptown to their residences, there to come into full possession of their senses, only to cry out their anguish. That ruin, black ruin, stared them in the face, if this news from Washington should prove true. We like it. Okay. Next chapter. By proclamation bearing date the 5th day of March, 1897, keep that in mind, the 5th of 2021. March, of course. The President summoned both houses of Congress to convene in extraordinary session for the consideration of the general welfare of the United States, and to take such action as might seem necessary and expedient to them on certain measures which he should recommend to their consideration, measures of vital importance to the welfare and happiness of the people, if not the very existence of the Union and the continuance of their enjoyment of the liberties achieved by the fathers of the Republic. While awaiting the day set for the coming together of the Congress, the great friend of the common people came suddenly face to face with the first serious business of his administration. 50,000 people tramped the streets of Washington without bread or shelter. Many had come in quest of office, lured on by the solemn pronouncement of their candidate that there should be at once a clean sweep of these barnacles of the ship of state, clean the swamp, and so complete had been their confidence in their glorious young captain that they had literally failed to provide themselves with either purse or scrip or shoes, and now stood hungry and footsore at his gate, begging for a crust of bread. But most of those making up this vast multitude were the unarmed warriors of peaceful armies, like the one once led by the redoubtable Coxey, decoyed from farm and hamlet and plantation by some nameless longing to go forth to stand in the presence of this new savior of society, whose advent to power was to bring them double pay for their toil. While on the march all had gone well, for their brethren had opened their hearts and their houses, as these unarmed warriors had marched with flying banners and loud huzzas through the various towns on the route. But now the holiday was over. They were far from their homes. They were in danger of perishing from hunger. What was to be done? They are our people, said the President. Their love of country has undone them. The nation must not let them suffer, for they are its hope and its shield in the hour of war, and its glory and its refuge in the time of peace. They are the common people for whose benefit this republic was established. The kings of the earth may desert them. I never shall. The Secretary of War was directed to establish camps in the parks and suburbs of the city, and to issue rations and blankets to those luckless wanderers until the government could provide their transportation back to their homes. On Monday, March 15th, the President received the usual notification from both houses of Congress that they had organized and were ready for the consideration of such measures as he might choose to recommend for their actions. The first act to pass both houses and receive the signature of the President was an act repealing the Act of 1873 and opening the mints of the United States to the free coinage of silver at the ratio of 16:1 with gold, and establishing branch mints in the cities Denver, Omaha, Chicago, Kansas City, Spokane, Los Angeles, Charleston, and Mobile. The announcement that reparation had thus been made to the people for the crime of 1873. And your reparation's coming. Every single one of you. Okay, and the Great North heard these cheers, and they trembled. The next measure of great public import brought before the House was an act to provide additional revenue by levying a tax upon the incomes substantially on the lines laid down by the legislation of 1894. The Republican senators strove to make some show of resistance to this measure, but so solid were the administration ranks that they only succeeded in delaying it for a few weeks. The first skirmish with the enemy, however, brought the President and his followers to a realizing sense that not only must the Senate be shorn of its power to block the new movement of regeneration and reform by the adoption of rules cutting off prolonged debate, but that the new dispensation must at once proceed to increase its senatorial representation, for who could tell what moment some one of the northern silver states might not slip away from its allegiance to the friends of the common people. The introduction, like Scranton Joe or whatever, the introduction of a bill repealing the various civil service acts passed for the alleged purpose of regulating and improving the civil service of the United States, and of another repealing the various acts establishing national banks and substituting United States notes for all national bank notes based upon interest-bearing bonds, which was an executive order that Trump signed recently. Opening the eyes of the Republican opposition to the fact that the President and his party were possessed of the courage of their convictions and were determined, some good report or evil report, to wipe all conflicting legislation from the statute books. The battle in the Senate now took on a spirit of extreme acrimony. Scenes not witnessed since the days of slavery were of daily occurrences on the floor of both the House and the Senate. Threats of secession came openly from the North, only to be met with the jeers and laughter of the Silver and Populist members. "We're in the saddle at last," exclaimed Southern members, "and we tend to ride on to victory." And as we know, Washington and Oregon and several others wanted to leave the United States, and now Texas is, and so it's just so 1800s, guys. It's just amazing. The introduction of bills for the admission of New Mexico and Arizona, and for the division of Texas into two states to be called East Texas and West Texas. Although each of these measures was strictly within the letter of the Constitution, fell among the members of the Republic, opposition like a torch in a house of tinder. There was fire at once of party spirit. Let's see, what was that? Okay, there was fire at once, and the blaze of party spirit leaped to such dangerous heights that the whole nation looked on in its consternation. Was the Union about to go up in a great conflagration and leave behind it but the ashes and charred pedestals of its greatness? "We are the people," wrote the President in lines of dignity and calmness. "We are the people, and what we do under the holy sanction of law." Rule of law, come to mind? "And there is no one so powerful or so bold as to dare to say, we do not do well in lifting off the nation's shoulders the grievous and unlawful burdens which preceding Congresses have placed upon them." And so the long session of the 55th Congress was entered upon, fated to last through summer heat and autumn chill, and until winter came again, and the Constitution itself set limits to its lasting. And when that day came, and its speaker amid a wild tumult of cheers arose to declare it ended not by their will, but by the law of the land, he said, "The glorious revolution is in its brightest bud. Since the President called upon us to convene in last March, we have with a strong blade of public indignation, and with a full sense of our responsibility, erased from the statute books of the marks of our country shame and our people's subjugation. Freedom. Freedom. Liberty cannot die. There remains much to be done in the way of building up. Let us take heart and push on. On Monday, the regular session of this Congress will begin. We must greet our loved ones from the distance. We have no time to go home and embrace them. Whew. Chapter 6. When a Republican member of the House arose to move the usual adjournment for the holiday, there was a storm of hisses and cries of "No, no," said the leader of the House amid deafening plaudits. "We are the servants of the people. Our work is not done, not complete." You know, like all of our Congress going on holiday. It's like the script, right, of what just happened. Instead of stimulus for the people, they go on holiday and they give themselves a salary raise. And now instead of voting for the people, they're voting for impeachment yet again. This is like so uncanny. Okay, in other words, don't go home over the Christmas break. Give the people money. Nah. Let them eat cake or let them eat ice cream, like Pelosi said, right? We are the servants of the people. Our work is not yet complete. There must be no play for us, while coal barons stand with their feet on the ashes of the poor man's hearthstone. See, exactly it. They put us into this with the lockdown. They put everybody into low to no income and all this stress, and that's exactly what this is representing here. It's incredible. There must be no play for us, because their bill collectors are coming. Okay, and lack of seeds. Okay, there must be no play for us while coal barons stand with their feet on the ashes of the poor man's hearthstone, and weeds and thorns cumber the fields of the farmer for lack of money to buy seed and implements. There must be no play for us while railway magnates press from their pockets of the laboring man 6 and 8%, return on thrice watered stocks, and rapacious landlords, enriched by inheritance, grind the faces of the poor. There must be no play for us while enemies of humankind are, by means of trust and combination and corners, engaged in drawing their unholy millions from the very lifeblood of the nation, paralyzing its best efforts, and setting the blight of intemperance and indifference upon it, by making life but one long struggle for existence, without a gleam of rest and comfort in old age. No, Mr. Speaker, we must not adjourn. But by our efforts in these halls of legislation, let the nation know that we are at work for its emancipation. And by these means, let the monopolists and money changers be brought to a realizing sense that the reign of the common people has really been entered upon. And then the bells will ring out, happier, gladder, new year that has ever dawned upon this republic. Yay! The opposition fairly quailed before the vigor and earnestness of the new dispensation. There was soon before the House, and pressed well on toward final passages, a number of important measures calculated to awaken an intense feeling of enthusiasm among the working class. Among these was an act establishing a loan commission for the loaning of certain moneys of the United States to farmers and planters without interest, an act for the establishment of a permanent Department of Public Works, its head to be styled Secretary of Public Works, rank as a cabinet officer, and supervise the expenditures of all the public money for the construction of public buildings and the improvement of rivers and harbors, an act making it a felony punishable with imprisonment for life for any citizen or combination of citizens to enter into any trust or agreement to stifle, suppress, or in any way interfere with full, open, and fair competition in trade and manufacture among the states, or to make use of any interstate railroads, waterways, or canals for the transportation of any food, products, or goods, wares, or merchandise which may have been cornered, stored, or withheld with a view to enhance the value thereof. Right. So they hold on to it to make supply and demand to raise the price of things. That's going away. Again, this is from the 1800s, but it's Nisara Jisara as far as I see it. And most important of all, a preliminary act having for its object the appointment of commissioners for the purchase by the federal government of all interstate railways and telegraph lines, and in the meantime the strict regulation of all fares and charges by a government commission, from whose established schedules there shall be no appeal. On Washington's birthday, the President issued an address of congratulations to the people of the United States, from which the following is extracted. The malicious prognostics of our political opponents have proven themselves to be but empty sound and fury. Although not quite 1 year has elapsed since I, agreeable to your mandate, restored to you the money of the Constitution, yet from every section of our Union comes the glad tidings of renewed activity and prosperity. The working man no longer sits cold and hungry beside a cheerless hearthstone. The farmer has taken heart and resumed work. The wheels of the factory are in motion again. The shops and stores of the legitimate dealer and trader are full of bustle and action. There is content everywhere, except in the counting room of the money changer, for which thank God and the common people of this republic. The free coinage of that metal which the Creator in his wisdom stored with so lavish a hand in the subterranean vaults of our glorious mountain ranges has proven a rich and manifold blessing for our people. Isn't that amazing that the gold was stored in the vaults? That's exactly what they tell us with Nisara and Jisara. Like, and Saint Germain hid it. There's just so much out there. I don't know if you guys seen that, the story about that. But Saint Germain being part of, like he'd lived lifetime after lifetime, and the money was put in mountains and vaults stored for the people, because you could see what was taking over was going to take from the people. And that's what we're going to see as Nisara Jisara. How exciting. It is in every sense of the word the people's money. And already the envious world looks on in amazement that we have shown our ability to do without foreign cooperation. The Congress of our Republic has been in almost continuous session since I took my oath of office, and the administration members deserve your deepest and most heartfelt gratitude. They are rearing for themselves a monument more lasting than chiseled bronze or polished monolith. They knew no rest. They asked for no respite from their laborers until, at my earnest request, they adjourned over to join their fellow citizens in the observance of this sacred anniversary. Fellow citizens, remember the bonds which a wicked and selfish class of usurers, maybe it's usurp, it's U-S-U-R-E-R-S, and speculators fasten upon you. And on this anniversary of the birth of the Father of our country, let us renew our pledge to undo completely and absolutely their infamous work. So pay attention to Washington's birthday this year, 2021. And in public assembly and family circle, let us by new vows confirm our love of right and justice, so that the great gain may not slip away from us, but go on increasing so long as the statute books contain a single trace of the record of our enslavement. As for me, I have but one ambition, and that is to deserve so well of you that when you come to write my epitaph, you set beneath my name the single line, "Here lies a friend of the common people." A friend of the common people. And we were just talking, I was talking with another pastor in my church the other day about, Trump not being a king, not coming from that spot, but walking with the people. And it was the whole point. All right, chapter 7. The first year of the Silver administration was scarcely rounded up, ere there began to be ugly rumors that the government was no longer able to hold the white metal at a parity with gold. "It is the work of Wall Street," cried the friends of the president. But wiser heads were shaken in contradiction, for they had watched the sowing of the winds of unreason, and knew only too well that the whirlwind of folly must be reaped in due season. The country had been literally submerged by a silver flood, which had poured its argent waves into every nook and cranny of the republic, stimulating human endeavor to most unnatural and harmful vigor. Mad speculation stalked over the land. People sold what they should have clung to, and bought what they did not need. Manufacturers heaped up good for which there was no demand, and farmers plowed where they had not drained, and drained where they were never fated to plow. The small dealer enlarged his business with more haste than judgment, and the widow drew her mite from the bank of savings to buy land on which she was destined never to set foot. The spirit of greed and gain lodged in every mind, and the common people, with a mad eagerness, loosened the strings of their leather purse to cast their hard-earned savings into wild schemes of profit. Every scrap and bit of the white metal that they could lay their hands on, spoons hallowed by the touch of lips long since closed in death, and cups and tankards from which grandsires had drunken, were bundled away to the mints to be coined into people's dollars. At the very first rumor of the slipping away of this trusted coin from its parity with gold, there was a fearful awakening, like the start and the gasp of the miser who sees his hoarded treasure melting away before his eyes, and he not able to reach out and stay its going. Protest and expostulation first, then came groans and prayers, from which there was an easy road to curses. The working man threw off his cap and apron to rush upon the public square and demand his rights. Mobs ran together, processions formed. Deputation hurried off to Washington, not on foot like the Coxey army, but on the swift wings of the limited express. The common people were admitted to the bar of the House, their complaints patiently listened to, and reparation promised. Bills for increased revenue were hurriedly introduced, and new taxes were loaded up on the broad shoulders of the millionaires of the nation. Taxes on checks, taxes on certificates of incorporation, taxes on deeds and mortgages, taxes on pleasure yachts, taxes on private parks and plausiences, taxes on wills of all property above $5,000 in value, taxes on all gifts of realty, for and in consideration of natural love and affection, taxes on all passage tickets to foreign lands, and double taxes on the estate of all absentee on and after the lapse of 6 months. There was a doubling up, too, of the tariff on all important luxuries, for as was said on the floor of Congress, if the silks and satins of American looms and the wines and tobacco of native growth are not good enough for my Lord of Wall Street, let him pay the difference and thank heaven that he can get them at that price. To quiet the murmurs of the good people of the land, additional millions were placed to the credit of the Department of Works, and harbors were dredged out in 1 month, only to fill up the next, and new systems of improvement of interstate waterways were entered upon a scale of magnitude hitherto undreamed of. The commissioners for the distribution of public money to farmers so impoverished as to be unable to work their lands were kept busy in placing peffer loans, where the need of them seemed to be the greatest, and to put a stop to the nefarious doings of money changers and traders in the misfortune of the people. A statute was enacted making it a felony punishable with imprisonment for life for any person or corporate body to buy and sell government bonds or public funds, or deal in them with a view to draw gain or profit from their rise and fall in value. But try never so hard, the government found itself powerless to check the slow but steady decline in value of the people's dollar. By midsummer it had fallen to 43 cents, and ere the fair Northland and wrapped itself like a scornful beauty in its autumn mantle of gold. The fondly trusted coin had sunk to exactly 1/3 of the value of a standard gold dollar. People carried baskets in their arms filled with the now discredited coin when they went abroad to pay a debt or purchase the necessaries of life. Huge sacks of the white metal were flung at the door of the mortgagees when discharge was sought for a few $1,000s. Men servants accompanied their mistresses upon shopping tours to carry the necessary funds, and the leather pockets took the place of the old-time muslin ones in male habiliments. At least the weight of the 15 coins required to make up a $5 gold piece should tear thin stuff and spill $1 at every step.